Hey, what's up, guys? We are back with another webinar, and this is dealing with Native Instruments Monarch, which is Mini Moog emulation. And we're going to be going over almost all features, and by the end of this video, you shall be comfortable enough to start making your own sounds and experimenting. This synth is monophonic, so it means one note at a time, and there's no polyphonic operation. It's three voices, and one oscillator can modulate the others to create FM sounds. It has some interesting features compared to the Arturia Moog. It has an overload and feedback, which both, at least one of them, is used on the Mini Moog. The Moog V, I believe they call it, or I think they call it the Mini V now. So right off the bat, here's something that I really like that they do. See, they really enjoy their noise floor emulation. It's from the mains. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's kind of a hum from the wall, the electricity, and so that's in this, and it's pretty interesting. It's not static, it kind of moves, and you can really tell if an emulation of a hardware product is correct when there's kind of a noise floor. And I'm not sure if it's 110 volts or 240. If anyone knows, let me know. That'd be an interesting piece of trivia if it's emulated. In the UK or wherever, in Europe or in North America, because we have different standards and different types of hums are exclusive to different areas of the world. And I'm rambling, so let's hop to it before I decide to restart this video. So we have Monarch here, and I have the important bits mapped to push in front of me. And with any kind of synth programming, with these synths in particular, it's a left to right programming process. So we're going to start with this side, and we're going to go right. So we have our octaves. We can go -1, -2. So it's just moving it down. Right, and that's all nice. Then we have our fine tune, and I think it's up to +5 semitones. And in case you're wondering, 1 octave is 12 semitones, 12 keys separating C0 to C1. So naturally, you have your octaves like that. We have our glide. To keep this kind of simple, we have our time. So the time we will have, I'll have off. No, I'll have always on. So the VCO will not snap because it's controlled by voltage. The voltage won't snap back down when you select a different key. Right, it takes an incremental amount of time to get to that pitch. So we'll increase the time and you can really hear it. Right, and there's different settings. So if you press it, right, and it's always. So if you have it off, you'll go up. You'll press a different note, a couple keys up, and it'll instantly be in that pitch, no matter what. But if you have, your glide time as always, it'll kind of memorize the key that you pressed. And we'll wait a bit, and then we'll go up, and it'll kind of go up, and that kind of adds like an expression. And usually I'll have this on, but usually, yeah, you can do what you want. And that's all nice. We have our pitch bend, which is this knobby knob here, or this modulation wheel. You can't set it. I believe it goes octave up, I'm not sure, and our modulation wheel here. So actually we'll get into that later. So we go on to our next section and we will turn some guys off. These buttons right here they'll disable the circuit each oscillator, and that's all fun. So we'll select our first oscillator. We'll go up to 16. We'll select triangle, turn the modulation off, and we have our volume. So this turns it on, and then this is the volume. And that is our square wave. You'll notice it's not symmetrical in terms of its voltage, its plus voltage and its negative voltage. That's why we have a signal analyzer, and that's how things become analog. And that was our filter. So what we'll do now is we have our triangle pulse, our saw, our square, our pulse, and then our even more of a pulse. And what we'll do is I'll show you what the modulation does. So now we have our oscillator 1 being modulated. So we can either, and we'll come down to this section, it's all color coded, it's all nice and neat. We'll have our modulation, we can either have it, our oscillator, affected by oscillator 3 or by a noise. So it'll be affected kind of randomly, and we can hear that now. And it's the mod wheel. I don't have a mod wheel on push, but it's the mod wheel that will set the amount that is modulated. So that's quite random. So a white noise circuit is affecting the pitch of our oscillator. Now this is one of the modulation options. One of them, there are 2 modulation options, which is neat. Or we can have our oscillator 1, the pitch of oscillator 1 affected by oscillator 3. Now this can get a little confusing, but it's not that confusing. Let's see here. We'll have a saw, oscillator 3, modulation is up. Let's see how this sounds. So we have it low. I'm not sure what low is, but it's a low frequency oscillator. It's below 20 hertz, I would assume, depending on the key you're pressing. So we have an upwards saw affecting the pitch. We can have a triangle. We have our fine tune here. These buttons are fine tuned. Oscillator 1 is set. You can have just a range per octave, and then you can have your set fine tune for your oscillators here. So what we're doing is we're changing the frequency of oscillator 1 over time with oscillator 3. Oscillator 3 isn't making any noise, I don't think. It's being modulated by oscillator 3. We can set the mix, or the amount, with our mod wheel. So when we go fast, when we have a very fast kind of modulation from oscillator 3, we get into the frequency modulation range, which is, you can't distinguish the pitch changes. It just sounds like a new sound. So those tiny little fluctuations, we're basically making a new waveform with frequency modulation. And that that is our basic routing in a nutshell. So I'll turn that off, and I will not modulate our frequency, our oscillator 1. So what it is now is just a simple saw, so we'll add another sound with oscillator 2. We'll turn that on with this button here. Hopefully I'm not losing you. So when you're doing subtractive synthesis, you're adding oscillators together and you're mixing them, and then adding a filter. That's where the term subtractive synthesis comes, and you're creating super awesome sounds. So we have a saw mixed with a square wave an octave up. Or we can have it an octave down to create kind of a bass. And there's kind of no way to sync them, but we'll give it a try. Notice how they're kind of drifting? The waveforms are drifting a little bit. Here, I'll give you a better example. So if you have them both at the same range, they start at different times, but they're playing at slightly different speeds, and that's how you get a warm analog sound. That's how they say warm. So these are detuned slightly, well, not slightly, they're detuned by a semitone. That doesn't sound too musical, so you have to detune it slightly. And if we're really good, you can align the phase, but you know that's not too easy. Right, and that's all well and good. So we'll try a different oscillator. We'll go pulse. And we'll bring it down an octave, so now we have a bassier sound. Right? But it has a little too much upper harmonics, right? So we're gonna jump around to our next section, which is the filter section. And this is basically the holy grail of filters, I would assume. And the cutoff is the amount you're shaving off the top, so it's low pass. So I couldn't find a manual for this because I googled for about 2 seconds, but I assume the MM is Mini Moog. So that's Mini Moog emulation. And the LP is 2-pole, so that would be, I think, oh, I don't know actually. So that'd be a 2-pole low pass filter and a 1-pole. So they sound different. The Mini Moog, I believe, is a 4-pole. And then you have your bandpass. Right. And the interesting thing about this is we'll turn everything off. No sound, but what we can do is we can add an oscillator with the filter. So we'll have a self-oscillating filter now. That's filter self-oscillation. And what that does is the feedback feeds back into it with the resonance and the cutoff, and you create a sine wave, which is interesting. So we'll go back to our original sound, and we will adjust our filter envelope. Don't worry about this. So now we have our filter envelope not doing anything to the cutoff. So just kind of copy that, I guess. All right. I'm not used to this interface. So we have our feedback and our overload, or our load. So what feedback is, we'll start with that first. No, we'll start with low first. It's basically boosting the volume before the filter. So it's kind of like saturation or like a guitar pedal. So what it's doing is it's boosting it. So we can basically, when that light comes on, that means that we are saturating our sound. So we're giving it like more beef, and that's how the fat sound, or the fat noise you make with your mouth, that's how that came out. So we have that now, and that's basically overloading. And I'm not sure how that was done back in the day, but I know how feedback was done. Feedback, what you would do is the original Mini Moog would have a headphone out, and the headphone out had its own kind of volume, and you would run that headphone out into the external instrument in of the same Moog you're working on, and you would get feedback. So you'd have basically two filters feeding into each other, or one filter feeding into another, and you'd get some really neat, gnarly sounds. And that's what they did back in the day. It wasn't a feature, but it was what people kind of figured out. So you get like a super fat, warm sound. So I'll give you an example. So we have our load, which is basically saturation. So you could turn a triangle wave into somewhat of a square, or more of a sinusoidal square wave. And with a feedback, you could turn it into a square wave monster. Right, and it's plenty saturated. Let's try that again with the filter open, with the overload. Yeah, and you got some nice snarly sounds with feedback. And when you mix them up, you get some okay sounds. And that's shaking my windows, so that's a good sign. Alright, so we have gone over our oscillator section. You mix and match your oscillators like so. And we adjust our feedback. The overload, it's set at 0 or at max volume, or at a max value, and you can't turn it on or off. The feedback, obviously you can. I'm not sure if, yeah, when you turn it on and off, it doesn't have a discernible effect, but you can really kind of boost it, and there's a discernible effect, which is nice. Yeah, we have our noise here, and our noise is either white noise or pink noise, white or pink. So white noise is full white noise, which is just random sounds, and it kind of blends over top of the sound you're working on, right? And that adds kind of an analog sound in slight volume, or in a slight value. It really works. No, I don't know if you can see that, but it adds like a bit of fur to the waveform, and that's good. It talks really well with distortion plugins you have, because it'll really add like upper harmonics randomly, and it sounds pleasing as opposed to like a clean, quote-unquote clean wave. But yeah, you have your white noise, and then you have your pink noise, and pink noise is just, I believe it's a high pass or low pass. Yeah, so it's a low pass white noise. So it's basically a filter, a hidden filter after the white noise circuit going back in, which is nice. Right, so you have 3 oscillators, so let's use all of them. We will have our pulse here. Sure, let's see how this sounds. I want to turn the volume up. You can see it's a very rich sound. Double click. You double click to reset the value of your sounds. See, I'm not using max volume. I'm mixing them in. So this would be the mixer section, obviously, and I'm mixing them in. Very neat. So let's get into this section that I'm probably going to fail at. Obviously 4 filter modes, the Mini Moog filter, I would assume, 2-pole low pass, 1-pole low pass, and a band pass. We can also modulate this with white noise. Which could in turn add some randomness and an analogish feel to it. But we'll leave that. So set the contour to that. So we have our filter and amp section, which we're probably going to end at. So what it is, we have our 2 sections here, a simple amplifier section. So there's no there's an attack, a decay, sustain, but there's no released, and it's kind of confusing for me how it works. So the attack is how long it takes when you press a note for the sound to reach full volume. So this could add a bit of neatness, and it's in seconds, or milliseconds I should say. Right, and it prevents like clicks and pops. And the decay is how long it takes after you release it for the sound to go back to normal. Right, and that's basically your amplifier section. And the sustain is how plucky you want it in between the attack and decay. So you can experiment with that. Pretty cool. Right, and that brings us to our filter envelope. And this controls, it's like automatically controlling the filter, open or closed. So we'll set it with an attack. Come on. Oh, we have to select the contour. We have to turn the contour up. And that is basically the amount. How it's affected, and we can go minus or positive. Come on. That'd be a plucky type of thing, and we'll have it open like a pad. So the attack is how long it takes to open. The decay is how long it's and how long it goes back to normal after you release it. And the sustain is how long it kind of trails off. Which is interesting. We also have our filter, our resonance. Is the amount, either positive or negative. trying to figure it out. Moog sound. Of course, you can experiment with different filters. There's 4 types. So generally, the mini Moog filter MM is more of an intense filter because it's basically 4 filters stacked on top of each other. And as you lessen the pulls, the less intense the filter is. And of course, bandpass is just a band. We won't stop there. We will overload this guy. And that's basically how they got the Daft Punk sound. So we'll go back to Mini Moog and we'll adjust the feedback, which will give us a more intense, fat sound. And there's 2 feedback modes, A and B. I'm not sure what distinguishes them. And that's pretty loud. Alright. Hope I didn't fail too much. So you have, we'll just review. So when you're programming this synth, you go left to right, and you have your kind of tuning, your overall pitch, your glide, your modulation, and pitch bend. And then you have your oscillator, which is basically your voices, and you modulate with your oscillator 3. And there's only 2 modulation options, but you know, that's good, you know, for basic things, because there was CV in the original. And then you have your mixer slash saturation and feedback. They're 2 different things. And then you have your filter and amp section. And yeah, you can make some cool sounds. Moog-like sounds, and you'll feel like you're in, you know, 1979. Alright, hope you learned stuff. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe and all sorts of fun stuff. But I didn't ramble. Alright, take care.